Wanna talk? So let's talk. Here. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna talk.
Welcome, everyone, to Talk to Solomon. Dr. Alan Keyes is our guest. My co-host is Chief Steve and Brent Johnson. And I've already been warned that I got a little carried away in the last sector, so let me start this sector being even worse. There's a trial ongoing right now that should be the trial of the century. It should have the American public spellbound. There should be people watching every jot and tittle, but it's getting no coverage whatsoever. Why? Because it's the story of a black man who made millions of dollars murdering black children. And you're saying, what? Huh? No one cares? No. Black people in this country have been so misinformed, so confused, or so stupid, and that's one of them, that they don't care that living black babies are being tortured, beheaded, murdered in cold blood for money. This is taking place in Philadelphia, a city with very little on the positive side, run by liberal Democrats, primarily black liberal Democrats, and they don't care. Dr. Keyes, am I being too strong?
No, not at all, Stan. I think, however, that first we need to keep in mind that literally this country is now presided over. That is to say, we have serving as president someone who, though people have celebrated his election as some big breakthrough for the black community, represents in his views and career a total rejection of the understanding of decency and justice and God-endowed right and the right to life and the obligations that are owed to every human life. He has rejected that throughout his career. And just as this woman from Planned Parenthood did down in North Carolina, during the course of his career, he actually spoke out in support of the practice of letting babies that were destined by their mother's choice for abortion, who had been born alive because of the failure of that abortion procedure. He voted against the bill that would have stopped that practice of infanticide on the grounds that somehow it injured a woman's right to choose, so-called. So we have presiding over the country now somebody who purports to be a black American, who stands for the forces in this country who are systematically perpetrating genocidal holocaust against the black community through abortion. And the trial you talk about, guys, now is one of those things that just absolutely clearly, without any equivocation, shows in its most grisly form the reality of this Holocaust. And of course, the people who are promoting this culture of death, the people who are promoting this destruction of the conscience and soul and very foundation spiritually and morally and actually of America, they don't want people to know that this thing they've been promoting, this cancer in the soul of America, has ongoing right before us an illustration that, among other things, also illustrates the fact that this person lifted up as some kind of icon of the black experience is in fact the bane of everything in principle and in truth that allowed people to fight against the evils that were perpetrated in slavery and lynching and all other kinds of violence. And he represents the very culture that even as it relies upon black votes being led up like fleet sheep to the slaughter has produced in the black community a devastation of infant life and family life and life in every respect.
I am having to restrain myself from saying what I want to say. So let me go to Chief Steve.
Well, first of all, I'm constantly amazed and stunned by the black community, because I think to myself that if anybody in America would really be out there just championing freedom and championing liberty and saving, wanting to save lives, it would be the black community who always talk about how they were slaves and oppressed. Not all of them are, as Dr. Keese is a great example, but now we also have more information. Scientifically, it is now proven that life starts at conception, and also that life has a separate DNA. So unlike someone that has an extra finger or toe, which is their body part and has their DNA to it, a baby has not the same DNA as the mother. It's a totally separate life form. The mother is merely a host, so it is not hers to do with as she chooses, or anyone else's for that matter. Now also, our founding documents support the idea and the belief that our rights come from God, and our founding documents say that all Americans and all people really have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The first one being life. Therefore, it's a God-given right supported by our government. And since these babies have their own life, it's our duty and obligation as a people and as a government to protect their life. And this practice is barbaric, and we must do everything we can to stop it as soon as possible.
There was no slave owner in the history of America who ever committed the level of depravity and carnage that this black Dr. Gosnell, or however you pronounce his name, Gosnell, did on black babies. We heard stories. We are taught stories by this moron that said the children belong to the government or whoever, about how slave owners would take a new baby from the womb of a black slave and kill it because they didn't want it. Maybe they had had sex with that person they didn't want, a mixed child or whatever. And yet, you have Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama and others who turn a blind eye to stories of children raining down in blood, screaming as they were murdered.
And it is murder.
Brett.
It's definitely murder. This Gosnell is a butcher. He's not only killed a number of women, he has taken live babies who have come through, been delivered, and then gone and cut their spines to murder them. This man needs the death penalty. This man needs to be eliminated. And if the courts won't do it, then the people should. And forgive me, Alan, but I'm just fed up with this. I think it's time that we take the law back into our own hands.
All right. Now, as bad as this story is about this lowlife, this butcher, as bad a story as that is, the story of the lack of a story is almost, or maybe even worse, that our I'll give Sean Hannity credit. He was talking about it today. Limbaugh talked about it. But ABC and CBS and NBC and CNN and MS, whatever the hell it might be, even Fox, they're not talking about it. Alan?
Well, then, sadly, I think the story that we're talking about and the reality that it represents doesn't serve the purposes of the elitist faction media. I mean, we have to remember, these are the people who put Barack Obama, the high priest of this culture of death, into the presidency of the United States. They are the people who every day aid and abet the lie that his tenure represents some kind of breakthrough for black America, when in fact it represents the studied destruction of the decent heart and the betrayal of the decent heritage of black America and America in general. They don't want this to get out because they're promoting that culture. It's not an accident that a man like this has been promoted by them. They are deeply committed to this abortion holocaust, and they can't go back on it. And they fear the deep outrage that will roll up from the conscience into the heart and into the action of America when they confront the reality of what this does, the deformity that it produces in the conscience and in the actions of people in this country, and realize that even as you are outraged at this butcher, I think we ought to be more outraged at the environment that sanctions as legal the practice that led to the possibility of that butchery. When are we going to realize what we are licensing? And that as we sentence those babies to death, we kill the conscience of our country and deserve the judgment of our God.
I couldn't agree more. All right, I want to segue a bit. What we are doing here on this program, and have been doing for many years, and others do them. Brent has done it on his own. Others, Alan has done it on his own. Many people are doing it. Has resulted in a phenomena that is very troubling to the powers. And that phenomena is called, are you ready? Zero TV homes. More and more young people, and not so young people, have said, I don't want the tripe, the crap, the boredom that is on television. And they are saying, I don't need it anymore because I have the internet. I have the ability to find or listen or see or learn from or be entertained by whatever it is I want. I am no longer in the good old days when I was around, none of the rest of you guys were. There were exactly 3 networks. There was nothing else. You watched ABC or CBS or NBC.
Live.
And most of it was live. I started watching television in 1949, I think it was. Today, we have now millions of people that have no television and no interest in one. I'll let Brent start this conversation.
Well, I think that this is actually a phenomenal story. I mean, I'm not gonna jump on the bandwagon too much because what are they replacing it with? We'll have to come into it. But television, as was said in Meredith Willson's The Music Man, the idle brain is the devil's playground. Television fosters idle brains. Parents put their children in front of the television to babysit them. Just sit there and watch TV and don't bother me. And I think that the idea that there are 5 million people, however small a percentage that is, it's a lot of people who have zero TV. I think that is phenomenal. Now the question is, what are you doing with yourself when not watching TV? If all they're doing is going online, okay, and watching the same basic garbage, just watching it online instead of having a television set, then it's a wash. It doesn't really do any good. So that would be the next step. But I think it's a great start. Throw the TV out, just toss it out.
Well, it's like the newspaper. Not no one, but the vast majority of people no longer bother with newspapers or magazines unless it's a specialty type magazine that talks about whatever, guns and ammo or antiques and art. Alan?
Well, I think I would agree with Brad's point wholeheartedly, because I think it's very important to consider the fact that though a certain kind of receptor for this information and entertainment, so-called, and so forth, is being discarded, another screen is taking its place, and that screen represents what is now the unification of the stream of information. So that at home now we get a cable service that provides us with both telephone, television, and internet. And when you sit down at your computer and look at the screen, or when you pick it up through Wi-Fi on your laptop or whatever you might do, you are essentially having access. But the information you're getting, and this is tragic in a lot of ways, is still information that's being produced. And I think the devil's playground is a colorful expression, but we need to keep in mind that the devil's not playing. He's deadly serious about the destruction of America's character, spiritual nature, and the foundations of that way of life which stood against the devilish work in the 20th century and defeated it soundly again and again. I think we're on the short list of most hated in the history of mankind. And that United States of America, grounded in the principles of the Declaration, is targeted by the adversary for destruction. And the way of destruction is not the way some people think. Money and the collapse of the economy, that's all a consequence of the destruction of the moral understanding and moral character that made the regime possible in the first place and that have sustained our constitutional self-government since it was founded. And all that's being destroyed. And a key vehicle for doing that is what you might call the popular culture of entertainment. Music, television shows, movies. I've noticed, for instance, that every form of entertainment now is being programmed to promote the acceptance of homosexuality, every form of it. And you watch anything, and there's going to be contained within it this message. It's almost as if they're creating programming now with the purpose of luring people into an experience that they can then use to promote these lies. And this is a strategy that I think is being followed overall. So I think Brent is right. It matters a great deal what people are doing with the greater choice they now have.
I think your point is well made, and my wife constantly says, I'm not going to watch television with you if you won't shut the hell up and let me enjoy the show. Yes, what you're saying is true, but I didn't notice it, and I don't want you pointing it out. But she really does. The fact is, there's these little innuendos and some direct frontal attacks saying if you don't accept homosexuality, there's something wrong with you. Well, there's something right with you. Homosexuality is destructive of the individual, destructive of the society, and every society in the history of the world that has accepted homosexuality has crashed and burned. And someone tell me where I'm wrong. And many people don't know that the Nazi Party was born out of a homosexual group. They call it the pink swastika. But that's another story. All right, we only have a couple minutes left. I'm going to go around the horn and let everyone just kind of give a thought. I'll start with you, Brett.
Well, every couple of weeks I come on, and it's just 2 weeks more entrenched in the attacks on our lives, our liberties, and our property rights. I think America and the world are in a crisis of totalitarianism. I think very similar to what happened in Nazi Germany. You had Hitler, you had Stalin, you had Tito, you had Mao. You had all these tyrants showing up within generally the same framework of time. I think that's what's going on today, and I think that it's only going to get worse until and unless the people finally decide that they've had enough and that they are willing to take whatever risks are necessary to restore the rule of law, restore the Constitution. And yes, a lot of people get hurt when that happens. A lot of people will go to jail. A lot of people will die. The tree of liberty, blood of patriots and tyrants and all that. But I do think that it is inevitable that it has to happen, because the only other option is to go down the road of abject servitude. And in the end, if you live in abject servitude, you'll be in a worse position to revolt, but you'll have to revolt someday.
Chief?
We're in a war. This is not a debate. And so I just want to remind everybody that Jesus said it takes more than good thoughts, it takes good deeds to accomplish something good. And that's what we all need to do, whatever we can. Whatever your abilities are, whatever my abilities are, we've got to do whatever we can to promote what is right for America, what is right for the world, what is right for the human race. And so we cannot sit back on our laurels and just watch things go by. We've got to write letters, talk to people, spread this show around, spread all the other good shows around. Do something. Do whatever you can to promote what is right, because if not, we're going to be lost.
Dr. Keys.
Well, then I don't do this very often. I'm not sure I've done it before, but I would want to urge people who are listening to go to my website and read the article that's up now, the one it refers to, which I wrote in 2010 about Rush Limbaugh's apostasy on the issue of marriage, and also articles I've written in the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks about the nature of rights and what right is all about in the American heritage. Because I think these articles are addressing the very most fundamental problem that we confront right now as people who want to revive and restore the heritage of the United States. Rush Limbaugh said one true thing when he talked about how the battle for marriage was lost and all this, mostly on false grounds, but here he was right. He said, we've lost a battle for language, but he did it as if the word marriage was the language. That's not the problem. What we have done is we have allowed the word right to be distorted, to lose its connection with the principle of right, which is that endowment from Almighty God, that connection with His will, and which also then provides us with a clear, rational, logical understanding of what exactly is a right and what is not. And I think folks need to revive this, because without it, we are going to be undone. These people are using the language of right to promote deep evils and wrong. That's not possible when the right understanding of that word is being implemented. And I think that we need to just encourage everyone to think this through, to get back in touch with the connection between right and what is right as it comes from the hand of God, and to be emboldened by that knowledge to stand up and engage in this battle, not defensively, but in a way that makes it clear that we mean to secure our rights. And if the government continues to abuse us, we will stand unto the death before we give up what God has made our own.
Couldn't say it any better. There's a saying that I've used. I'll say it again, especially in light of what Alan has just said. It is never right, think of how right comes from God, to do wrong. So killing an unborn baby can never be right. And it is never wrong to do right, to follow what God tells us is right. Give it some thought. God bless you, and thank you for watching our work. You can make a difference. Make it happen. Good night, everyone.